For Creamer Media's Polity, I am Shannon de Rehove. Researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Suttner joins me for Suttner's View, a weekly commentary on South Africa's political scene. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you.
Do you see the South African political landscape changing at the moment?
It's quite, for the average person, it would be a question that is absurd, because the ANC has just returned to power with a big majority, a little bit less than before. But I think it is an important question, because a lot of people are very unhappy at the moment, including members of the ANC. You have someone saying on Twitter yesterday, what will it take for the ANC to dump Zuma? And what I would ask is, what does the ANC actually gain from having a leader like Zuma? I don't want to personalize it with Zuma, because it tells you something about the ANC today, which would be a reason why I think people would want change. Now, when I was involved in the struggle, maybe I was very innocent, but we expected things to turn out differently from the way they've turned out now. I don't know whether others who went to jail had in mind one day owning big farms and having shares and getting tenders and all of these things. Certainly, when I was involved, and I thought the people who were with me were involved because we felt something about the freedom of this country. And I think people are getting a bit upset, not only because the dream has become a nightmare, but because everything has now got a price. If you believe in XYZ and you get offered some job that will pay you a hell of a lot of money, well then what you have stood for in the past seems to just go by the wayside. And we see this with this inquiry into the Aurora mine, where they just acid stripped and the workers were not paid. It's just a sort of callousness, which I think people are very unhappy about. Also, the politics of the 80s and the 90s and the 50s was a very different politics for another reason. There was a lot of debate. And I think we are not having much political debate in South Africa. And it would be important, if there were to be change, to not focus purely on Parliament. I think Parliament is very important in the sense that Parliament has got the power, which it's not exercising over the Nkandla report, but it's got the power to hold the executive accountable, to ensure that the Constitution is safeguarded. So we mustn't ignore Parliament. But I think we mustn't think that politics is only manifested through elections and through what happens in Parliament, and the rest of us then sit back and watch it on television as if that is how we learn about politics in this country. One of the ways of learning about politics in this country is to do it yourself, to get involved in things that are upsetting you. And you have got signs that this is happening, as in the development of the NUMSA initiative and the possible United Front, and the short-lived Ahang movement. But I think it's important that a number of different initiatives get started if we want to change the political landscape in this country.
What is the route you would suggest for remedying the political problems of which people are becoming increasingly aware?
I think that very many people, when they answer a question like this, they come up with an ideological answer. And they say the remedy is socialism, or we need a truly liberal democracy. For me, the question really is to identify the problem. And when you identify the problem, you work out how the problem can be addressed. It doesn't have a label. It doesn't have a doctrine in the first place. It's a case of learning. And if after learning about the situation, you have an idea as to what could be done, then you try and teach people what needs to be done. But then they say to you, no, it can't be done because of this, that, and the other reason. And teaching can lead to the teacher learning. So learn and teach, teach and learn. There's an interaction. They're not a hierarchy necessarily. Now, the NUMSA initiative is a very ambiguous initiative. There is a tension between its desire for socialism, its desire to set up a workers' party, and the claim that it wants to set up a united front. Now, if you want to set up a united front, you are then addressing people that go beyond the organized working class. And I cannot now name who should be part of the united front, because I do not know what is happening in DR, for example, or in Bronkhorstspruit. What you need to do with the united front is to ask yourself, what are the problems that people all over the country in a range of sectors are feeling at the moment? They're problems of homelessness, they're problems of unemployment, they're problems of healthcare, they're problems of education, they're problems in the environment, that you have no proper streets, no proper places for children to play. You've got crime and violence on a massive scale throughout the country. Now, when you go and ask people, instead of telling them that the answer is socialism, when you go and ask people what is it that they want, they may come up with things that you've not thought about. And that must shape the type of understanding that you have and the type of response that you develop in terms of organization. My worry about the NUMSA initiative, now when I'm saying this, I do want to be constructive because I believe that NUMSA is a very important force. It's got a huge membership, and I do not want to impugn their good faith. But what I think is the problem is that the people who are talking with NUMSA are already like-minded with NUMSA, and they are not bringing to bear the insights of the homeless, the shack dwellers, the migrant workers who are not unionized, the people who are the landless, the gender activists, or the people who are not active but suffer from gender inequality. And I think that even if now they use the word non-sexism, it coexists with real gender blindness. Like the president of NUMSA referred to the inquiry into Vavi's actions in head office as a sex tribunal. Now, what I took that to signify is that they were not taking seriously unequal power leading to a sexual relationship. So that by calling it a sex tribunal, the president of NUMSA was trivializing what had happened there, and what it made me think is they are not taking seriously gender. Now, 50% of the population or more are women, and if you don't take that seriously, what type of united front are you building? You can use these words, non-sexism. Zuma uses non-sexism, and we know he's not exactly a gender activist. So My hope is that there will be time, will be possibilities for building something new, and that can only be done on a non-sectarian, broad basis.
So it would require each of us to become active citizens in our own country.
Yes, and I think for us to be active citizens means that organizations need to be developed which can accommodate us.
Well, thank you very much. That was Professor Raymond Suttner speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about South Africa's changing political landscape.